My name is Olivia Stephens, 32 years old. The tires of my Audi hummed against the smooth asphalt as I drove toward the sprawling estate where my parents had lived for more than 3 decades. Their 35th wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of love, endurance, and family, but for me, the word family had always carried a sharp edge. Tonight, as the sun dipped low and lit the sky in bruised shades of lavender and orange, I knew I was heading straight into the familiar theater of favoritism. I had chosen a gray pencil skirt and a navy blouse professional, understated respectable. My mother despised anything that made me stand out too much. Years ago, she'd scolded me for wearing a red dress to a Christmas party, hissing under her breath that we don't steal attention from the real star. That star, of course, was my younger sister, Madison. When I pulled up in the driveway, headlights swept across the massive oak doors. Almost at the same moment, Madison's silver Mercedes glided in behind me. She stepped out in a shimmering silver dress that caught the fading sunlight like a spotlight designed just for her. Her hair was perfectly curled, her jewelry delicate but dazzling. She looked like she had walked off the pages of a glossy magazine. My parents came rushing out to greet her. My father, Michael, lifted Madison off the ground and spun her like she was still 5 years old. My mother clutched her hands, tears of joy already glistening. "Our princess," she cooed. Their faces radiated pride, devotion, adoration. Then they noticed me. My mother's lips twitched into a thin line, her eyes scanning my outfit before she muttered, "Olivia, you've arrived." My father gave my shoulder a single perfunctory pat before turning back to Madison. It was the same script I had watched play out for decades, and yet each time the sting was fresh. Inside, the event planner guided guests toward the ballroom, and I found myself staring at the seating chart. Madison's name gleamed at table 1, nestled right beside my parents'. My name was buried at table 14, shoved into the far corner near the swinging kitchen doors. 6 tables stood between us. 6 physical reminders of the distance they'd always maintained. As I traced the numbers, my mother glided up beside me, her perfume a cloud of roses and something sharper. "I put you with the Andersons," she whispered, as if she were doing me a favor. "They're interested in tech consulting. You should network instead of sitting with us. It will be good for your career. Not good for family, not good for belonging, good for usefulness." I pressed my lips together and nodded. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her lean toward the event planner, her voice hushed, but not hushed enough. "Make sure we get a photo of just the 3 of us, Michael, Madison, and me. That's the one I want enlarged for the living room. Just 3, never 4. Her words sliced clean through me. 32 years old, and I was still 8 again, relegated to the kids' table at Thanksgiving while Madison was elevated to the adult one. I remembered Christmas mornings when Madison's presents covered the entire room and mine were pushed under a single branch. I remembered my high school debate championship, the one I'd won, where they arrived just in time for the closing speech because Madison's elementary choir rehearsal had run late. Even my early victories had been swallowed by her shadow. My regional entrepreneurship award was shoved in some dusty closet, while Madison's watercolor of our house was professionally framed and hung in the entryway. "Olivia," my father's voice called across the room, snapping me from the memory. He was waving me over. For a moment, I thought he might have remembered something of me. But no. He simply wanted to remind me to check the champagne stock so the waiters didn't bring the wrong brand for the toast. Dom Perignon, not Krug. Very specific. I swallowed my pride and said I'll check on it. By the time the guests began to pour in, dressed in jewels and silk, laughter echoing against the high ceilings, I already felt like a ghost moving among them. My parents flitted from group to group, glowing with the kind of warmth they never seemed to find for me. Madison sparkled at their side, accepting compliments with practiced grace. The stage was set, the players assembled. I knew my role. Background, supporting character, silent presence. And yet somewhere deep in my chest, a seed of defiance stirred. Something inside me whispered that this night would not end the way they expected. The clinking of glasses gradually hushed the room as my father stood at the head table, his shoulders squared with the confidence of a man who believed every word he spoke mattered. A hush swept across the ballroom, the kind that demands reverence, though my pulse quickened with dread instead of admiration. 35 years he began raising his glass. His voice carried easily across the marble hall. 35 years of marriage, building a home, creating a legacy. His gaze drifted from the crystal chandeliers to my mother, who smiled through tears, and then inevitably landed on Madison. Not once did his eyes flicker in my direction. He went on weaving stories that stretched 10 minutes long. Madison as a little girl singing at their 20th anniversary, never mentioning that I was the one who organized that entire surprise. Madison's college graduation, her volunteer work, her watercolor classes. 10 uninterrupted minutes of Madison. Not one word about me. My hands were clenched so tightly in my lap that my nails dug half-moons into my palms. I forced my expression into one of polite attention, the kind I had perfected after years of practice while inside a storm roared. Finally, my father raised his glass. To my beautiful wife and to Madison, the greatest gift of this marriage. The words seemed to echo bouncing off the gilded walls. My mother stood embracing Madison with trembling arms, tears spilling down her cheeks. Madison beamed like a queen receiving her coronation. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation in honor of the chosen one. I clapped too, alone on the edge of the room, my palms stinging with each hollow slap. I caught sight of my cousin Andrew shaking his head, his jaw tight with disapproval. Aunt Carol dabbed her eyes, though not from joy. Uncle Stephen stared pointedly at his watch. Everyone knew. They'd always known. But still the charade went on. Now my father announced with a flourish, we have a special gift. My mother produced a velvet Tiffany's box, bright red leather with gold trim. Gasps rippled through the guests. Madison's hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe watch. Timeless, my father declared, just like Madison herself. Someone whispered the price behind me, $18,000. Madison squealed, throwing herself into their arms, while the applause reignited. For me, nothing. I was the firstborn, and I received nothing, not even acknowledgement. I excused myself, though no one noticed. I drifted toward the bar, desperate for a drink, strong enough to numb the humiliation clawing at my chest. Before I reached it, Aunt Linda intercepted me. Her hand on my arm was firm, her eyes sharp with pity. "Olivia," she murmured, leading me out onto the terrace where the night air was cool and smelled faintly of roses. That's the third extravagant gift they've given Madison this year. First the spa retreat in March, then the entire summer in Italy. I blinked. I thought Madison won a scholarship for Italy. Linda's lips twisted. Your father paid every cent. And her apartment, he's been covering it for 3 years. Independent, she calls it. Independent my foot. Her words landed like stones, heavy, undeniable. My world, already fragile, cracked deeper. I didn't know, I whispered. Of course you didn't, Linda said softly. Because they never wanted you to. My phone buzzed in my hand. Marcus, my boyfriend, had texted. How's the royal coronation going? I've got an evacuation plan ready if you need it. Despite myself, a small laugh broke through my tight throat. Marcus always knew how to pierce the fog. Still, the bitterness didn't loosen its grip. Uncle Thomas joined us on the terrace, his scotch glass in hand. He studied me for a moment before sighing. It's a shame they didn't mention your innovation award last month. Your success. It's always made them uncomfortable. His words hit with the force of a truth I'd long avoided. I nodded silently, my throat too tight to speak. Inside, laughter roared. Champagne flowed. The real family posed for photos on the grand staircase. And I stood outside in the cold, watching shadows flicker through the tall windows like a play I'd never been cast in. I wasn't sure how much longer I could play the part of the invisible daughter without breaking. The laughter inside faded into a dull hum as I slipped away from the terrace. My heels clicked against the polished marble floors while guests mingled oblivious to my absence. I knew where I needed to go, not to the bar, not to the photo session, but upstairs. Somewhere private, somewhere I could breathe. My old bedroom. The hallway upstairs smelled faintly of lemon polish and memories I didn't want. I hesitated before the door hand resting on the brass knob. Part of me still expected it to feel like mine, but when I pushed it open, the air caught in my lungs. It wasn't my room anymore. The soft green walls I had chosen at 12 were now coated in Madison's favorite pink. My bookshelf, once lined with novels and debate trophies, now displayed her beauty pageant crowns glittering beneath the lamplight. The corkboard where I had tacked honor roll certificates now held sorority composites. Her perfume lingered in the air, sugary and suffocating. My desk, the one where I'd spent sleepless nights preparing for exams, had been transformed into a vanity piled high with palettes and lipsticks. The window seat where I used to curl up with books was buried under a mountain of teddy bears Madison probably hadn't touched in years. A cardboard box sat shoved into the closet corner. Scrawled across the top in permanent marker, Olivia's Miscellaneous. My chest tightened as I knelt to open it. Inside my college diploma lay bent under my Young Entrepreneur Award. My graduation tassel tangled around a photo from business school. achievements reduced to clutter, discarded, and forgotten. I sat heavily on the bed, her bed now pink comforter and all. My hand slipped under a pillow, brushing against something solid. I pulled out a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. My heart lurched. Grandma Eleanor's book. I opened the cover, and there it was, her familiar handwriting looping and steady. To my Olivia, the girl who will forge her own path. With love, Grandma. I swallowed hard as tears blurred the words. Memories flooded back my grandmother, pressing books into my hands at family gatherings while Madison unwrapped jewelry and dresses, her whisper in my ear. Books build worlds where no one can tell you who to be. As I flipped through the brittle pages, an envelope slid out. Its paper was yellowed, the seal stamped with a wax E. My name was written across the front. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The letter was dated 3 weeks before she died. My dearest Olivia, it began. I know this day will come, the day the weight of being unseen becomes unbearable. I lived through it too. My husband's family treated me as your parents treat you, always a shadow, never the sun. But remember, you are the protagonist of your own life, not their supporting character. The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I have arranged with Mr. Graham at the bank an account in your name only. It holds funds and my personal diaries. The access code is the date we visited the Museum of Modern Art. It is not about the money, though it may help, but about legacy. You are my true heir in spirit. The quiet ones, Olivia, observe, learn and succeed where the celebrated often fail. Family is not always who shares your name. Family is who sees you. By the time I reached the final line, you will succeed because you already have everything you need inside you. My hands were shaking so badly the paper nearly slipped from my grip. For 32 years, I had been invisible in my parents' house, but here in my grandmother's handwriting, I was seen. The tears broke loose, then falling hot and fast. I pressed the letter against my chest, the sharp edges cutting into my palm. It was the most painful kind of relief to know someone had always known and had prepared me for this very moment. For the first time that night, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. Somewhere downstairs, applause thundered again. Another toast for Madison, no doubt. But upstairs in the room that no longer belonged to me, I felt something shift. Maybe I didn't need a seat at their table. Maybe it was time to build my own. I tucked my grandmother's letter carefully into my purse, pressing it between my wallet and the lining, as if protecting something sacred. When I wiped my face, the mirror reflected not just tears, but a strange new clarity. The invisibility cloak I had worn my entire life felt thinner now, fraying at the edges. Downstairs, the family was gathering on the grand staircase for photos. I lingered in the shadows, watching. My father's arm around Madison, my mother clutching her hand. I stood to the side, half in frame, until my mother's voice rang out. Now one of just the three of us. The photographer rearranged them. The real family. The complete family. No one called for me. No one noticed when I stepped away. My heels echoed down the hallway toward my mother's dressing room. The scent of jasmine and powder filled the air. On the vanity, tucked into a silk scarf, gleamed a brooch I recognized instantly my grandmother's. She had worn it every Thanksgiving until one year it simply vanished. My mother must have borrowed it and never given it back. I reached for it with steady hands, unpinned it from the scarf, and held it to my blouse. The weight was solid, reassuring. A small piece of my grandmother's legacy reclaimed. The music swelled in the ballroom behind me. Champagne toasts, laughter, a cheer for Madison. I didn't turn back. Instead, I headed for the garden doors where Mr. Graham, my parents' financial advisor, stood nursing a glass of champagne. He looked startled when I approached. Mr. Graham, I said, extending a card. Olivia Stephens, CEO, Stephens Digital Solutions. We have business to discuss. His brows rose as he studied the card. For a moment, silence hung between us, then he smiled faintly. I've been following your company's growth. Your grandmother would be proud. The words hit me like an anchor, grounding me. I nodded once. Thank you. I walked straight out to the valet stand, handed over my ticket, and didn't look back. Behind me, the family was raising their glasses, preparing to cut the cake. They didn't notice the daughter slipping away into the night. The Ivy restaurant was warm and alive, candlelight flickering against glass, and laughter humming low. My real family was waiting, Marcus, my boyfriend, leaning casually in his chair, Rachel, my sharp-eyed business partner, and Brian, who had believed in me since the beginning. The maitre d' greeted me with, Miss Stephens, your table is ready. The moment I sat down, Marcus raised his glass. To the woman who built something real while others planned parties. I barely had time to breathe before the world around us shifted. Phones began buzzing mine, Rachel's, Brian's, even the diners at the next table. Notifications flashing across screens. Breaking news: Stevens Digital Solutions acquired by TechCorp in a $75 million deal. The restaurant seemed to pause, then erupt. Strangers turned to congratulate me. Waiters brought champagne on the house. The owner himself came over to thank me for creating the software that helped his daughter through law school. Rachel slid a wrapped package across the table. I opened it to find a framed black and white photo of my grandmother at my age, seated at a desk in her small accounting office, determination burning in her eyes. "She left this with Aunt Linda years ago," Rachel explained softly. "We thought tonight was the night you should have it." I stared at the photograph, the reflection of myself in her younger face. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen, not by accident, not by bloodlines, but by legacy and by the people who truly saw me. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from Madison. "Where are you? Mom's furious. Are you seriously skipping the cake?" Then my mother's voicemail accusing me of humiliating them. My father's curt message: "You missed Senator Mitchell and the Carsons." They asked about tech consultants. Not a single word about me. Not a single question if I was okay. I set my phone face down the screen, glowing against the linen tablecloth, and turned to Marcus. "They never asked if I was all right," I said. He met my gaze steadily. "That would require them seeing you as a person, Olivia, not just an accessory to their narrative." I exhaled, the tightness in my chest easing at last. Around me, laughter rose. Glasses clinked. And celebration bloomed, not for Madison, not for my parents, but for me. For once, I wasn't 6 tables away from the important people. I was at the head of the table, my own table. The Hudson River shimmered like liquid silver beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sky Lounge. The restaurant perched on the 38th floor, elegant and cold, a fitting stage for what I knew had to happen. I arrived 5 minutes early with Natalie, my executive assistant, at my side. She carried a leather folder tucked under her arm. Evidence reminders, the quiet truth I'd collected over a lifetime. My parents arrived 7 minutes late. My father in a perfectly tailored suit, my mother wrapped in cream cashmere with pearls that gleamed against her throat. They looked polished, unbothered. Madison trailed behind them, her smile brittle, her eyes darting nervously from me to Natalie. The hostess led us to a table set by the windows. My father frowned when he saw Natalie. "I didn't realize this was a business meeting." "It isn't," I replied evenly. "She's here in case documents are needed." A flicker of discomfort passed across my mother's face, but they sat. The waiter poured water. Silence stretched. Finally, my mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin. "Do you understand how humiliating it was when you left the party?" Guests asked questions. People noticed. My father's voice cut in sharper. "The Andersons were waiting to meet you. Senator Mitchell. The Carsons. You embarrassed us by vanishing." I folded my hands on the table. I left after being excluded from the family photo, the one you requested of just 3 people. My mother's hand flew to her necklace. "You were eavesdropping, Olivia. It was just one photo. Don't be so dramatic." "One photo," I said quietly, "is 32 years of family dynamics captured in a single frame." Natalie slid the leather folder forward. I opened it, laying out photographs in chronological order. Christmas 1998. Madison surrounded by gifts, while I sat in the corner with a single book. Middle school graduation me, holding a diploma, their eyes turned toward Madison. A high school party where I was cut from the edge of the frame, each image a testimony to decades of erasure. My mother's voice faltered. "Bad angles, that's all." My father scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We've been there for you, haven't we?" Just because we didn't clap the loudest. The waiter interrupted, taking drink orders. My father ordered whiskey neat, my mother sparkling water. Madison mimicked her choice. I ordered black coffee. Madison leaned forward, voice rehearsed, almost pleading. "When you left Olivia, I felt like you were punishing me for being loved. It's not my fault they—" Her voice cracked. She looked down, mascara smudging at the corners of her eyes. My mother reached across the table. "We told everyone you're under stress. Burnout. People understand burnout. You didn't need to make this into a scene." I almost laughed. "You think leaving was a stunt, Grandma didn't." Their faces snapped toward me. My mother's went pale. "What do you mean?" "She left me a letter before she died. A letter you never told me about, along with an inheritance, funds, and her diaries. She knew what you were doing, and she refused to let it destroy me. My father's hand slammed against the table, rattling the glasses. That's absurd. You're twisting things again. Playing entrepreneur instead of joining a respectable firm, and now this. Careful, Michael, my mother hissed, glancing around at the other diners. People are watching. My father leaned in, voice low, venomous. Success has gone to your head. You always needed attention, just like when you were little. This time I laughed a short, sharp sound. You're right. Success has changed me. It's shown me I don't need scraps of validation from you anymore. I pulled a sleek business card from my purse and set it in the center of the table. Olivia Stephens, CEO, Stephens Digital Solutions. The letters gleamed under the chandelier. Last week I said my voice steady. My company closed a $75 million acquisition with TechCorp. The news broke during your party while you toasted Madison. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand shook pearls quivering at her throat. Madison's lips parted, but no sound came out. My father's face reddened, his jaw clenching so tightly I could hear his teeth grind. If you want a relationship with me moving forward, I said, standing and gathering my things, it will be on new terms, equal respect, no exclusion, no more me at table 14 while Madison takes center stage. My father opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, stopping him. You've had 32 years to speak. Now it's my turn. Natalie rose beside me, her presence quiet but firm. I looked once at each of them, then turned toward the elevators. My heels clicked across the marble, each step lighter than the last. The doors slid shut, sealing me away from their stunned silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't leaving in shame. I was leaving in power. 6 months had passed since I walked away from the Sky Lounge table, leaving my parents speechless and Madison in tears. Now the only table that mattered stood in the dining room of my penthouse, a polished antique cherry wood piece I had fought for at the estate auction. It was my grandmother's table, the one she had presided over for decades. Not a relic of my parents' dominance anymore, but a reclamation of legacy. Sunset painted the Manhattan skyline gold through tall glass windows. The table gleamed under soft light, set with my grandmother's Lenox china, delicate cream porcelain trimmed with faded blue flowers. I traced a fingertip over the rim of one plate, remembering all the times I had been pushed to the far end. Tonight I was at the head. The doorbell chimed. Marcus arrived first, holding a bottle of Cabernet in one hand and a folder in the other. Projections for the mentorship program we'd been building together. 28 applicants so far, he said with quiet pride. It's working, Olivia. You're opening doors. Not just doors, I corrected, smiling faintly. Chairs. Everyone deserves a seat that matters. Guests trickled in. Emily, my childhood friend with her husband. Rachel and Brian from my company, bringing laughter that immediately warmed the room. 2 of my former professors, now part of the foundation board. Jennifer, the attorney, who had drafted the donation for the family therapy center I'd opened in my grandmother's name. The room filled with voices that overlapped in joy, not competition. Glasses clinked, candles flickered. No one fought for attention here. Everyone was welcome. I slipped into my study for a brief moment, my eyes landing on the framed letter from my grandmother by the window. Remember, Olivia? We choose which chairs matter. Her words had carried me through my TEDx talk last month about finding worth outside of family approval. The video had already reached hundreds of thousands. My phone buzzed. A message from Madison. They're still talking about you missing Easter dinner. Dad calls it another stunt. But her texts had softened over the months. She'd met me for coffee twice away from our parents. She confessed she wanted to apply to community college, that she was tired of being the porcelain doll in their glass display. She was cautious, fragile, but for the first time she was speaking in her own voice. Another buzz, a photo this time. 2 little girls tangled in a tire swing, laughter frozen in the air. Madison had scrawled on the back, "We were happy until they taught us not to be." I pressed the photo to my chest for a heartbeat, then slipped it into my pocket. Back in the dining room, Marcus stood glass raised. To Olivia, who built something real while others clung to appearances. Emily added, to second chances. I rose, feeling the weight of my grandmother's brooch pinned over my heart. To the chairs that matter, I said, my voice steady. And the people who occupy them. Applause filled the room, warm and genuine. For once, I didn't feel like I was fighting to exist. I simply belonged. Later, when the guests had gone, I lingered by the empty table. Tomorrow, I would host again. Place cards were already written in my hand, each one, for someone who had chosen me not out of obligation, but out of genuine connection. At the far end, one chair sat empty, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of what I had left behind. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked to the window. The city lights stretched endlessly alive with possibility. My phone buzzed again, an email from my mother. Subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't open it, not tonight, not tomorrow either. They could wait. I thought of the girl who once sat at table 14, shrinking into the corner, praying for scraps of recognition. That girl had cut herself out of family photos because she was already invisible. She was gone now. In her place stood the woman my grandmother had always believed I could be, the woman who had built her own table, claimed her own chair, and filled the room with people who saw her. I lifted my glass toward the skyline, whispering into the silence. To you, Grandma. To every overlooked daughter who finds her light. To finally being seen. The city glowed back at me, a reflection of everything I had forged on my own. And for the first time in 32 years, I knew without a shadow of doubt I was enough. I always had been.